Gang members stormed a convenience store, but the cashier already had their names written down. This story starts when 3 masked men kicked in the glass door of a quiet convenience store at 2:14 a.m. Police later said the only reason the clerk survived was because of something so bizarre, so unnerving, that experienced detectives needed to step outside for air. The cashier already had every one of their names written down before the robbery ever happened, and not scribbled in panic. In calm, neat handwriting, hours before they arrived. This is the story of why. It begins with a man named Ethan Cole, a 27-year-old night cashier in a rural Midwest town, known for being quiet, polite, and, as some locals put it, a little too observant. The store was almost always empty, just truckers, insomniacs, and the occasional couple looking for snacks. Ethan worked the graveyard shift because he said he liked watching how people act when they think no one's paying attention. And for years, no one really noticed him, until the night he predicted a crime. But to understand why the store security footage later shocked investigators, we have to go back about 6 hours before the break-in, when a police cruiser rolled into the lot and an exhausted deputy named Ward walked in to grab a coffee. Ward knew Ethan not well, but enough to trade small talk. So when he saw Ethan staring down at a small notepad with this disturbingly focused expression, he asked what he was writing. Ethan slid his hand over the page and casually said, "Just taking notes for my book idea." Ward didn't think anything of it, grabbed his coffee, and left. What he didn't know was that Ethan had just written down 3 names, real names, of 3 men who were at that moment sitting in a deserted warehouse 12 miles away, loading guns, wrapping bandanas around their faces, and practicing, over and over, the robbery they planned to carry out that night. And Ethan knew, not because he could see them, not because he overheard something, but because something about the past 2 weeks had made him increasingly certain those exact 3 men were coming for him. Not the store. Him. It started with a pattern. Late-night customers lingering too long, refusing to make eye contact, stepping outside to text before driving off. A beat-up silver Honda looping by the store 3 or 4 times each shift. The same graffiti tag appears closer and closer to the storefront every morning. A rising pressure, a feeling like a storm, building behind him. Ethan wasn't paranoid. He was preparing, but not for the reason anyone thought. The 3 men, Elias Ghost Mendoza, Jordan Price, and Reggie Half-Step Wells, were part of a small street crew, known for smash grabs and armed intimidation. But they weren't known for targeting random stores. They targeted people who owed them, people who crossed them, people they believed had seen something they shouldn't have. And 2 weeks before the robbery, Ethan had witnessed a beating behind the pharmacy across the street. He hadn't been the target. He hadn't even seen faces, but he heard voices, distinct voices, voices he recognized later when those same men came into his store at 3 a.m. pretending to shop. Elias had stepped close and said, "Long shift tonight, huh?" It wasn't a question. It was a warning. After that night, Ethan started writing down everything. License plates, descriptions, tattoos, phrases. Not because he wanted revenge, because Ethan Cole had a habit. He solved problems by observing them until the solution revealed itself. But what he didn't know was that the gang wasn't planning a threat. They were planning to kill him. The decision had been made after they realized Ethan had indirectly helped police identify a vehicle connected to them. Ethan didn't know his notes were valuable, but the gang did, and they assumed the worst. So the robbery wasn't about stealing the register. It was a planned execution. And at 2:14 a.m., the store door shattered. The first man screamed, "Hands where I can see them!" The second kicked aside a rack of chips. The third blocked the exit and aimed a shotgun straight at Ethan's chest. But here's where everything became strange. Ethan didn't panic. He didn't shake. He didn't beg. Instead, according to body cam audio later released, Ethan slowly slid a small notebook across the counter toward them and said, calmly, almost like a teacher showing students their test results, "I wrote your names down already." That sentence froze all three men more effectively than any weapon could have. Jordan, the youngest, hesitated. Elias stepped forward and smacked the notebook off the counter, shouting, "You think this is a game?" But when the book hit the floor, it flipped open, and the first page showed their names in ink. Not scribbled, not rushed, but written hours earlier. Elias demanded to know how. Ethan didn't answer. He just stared at them with this eerie, unblinking focus, and the moment stretched long enough that the audio caught the tiniest hitch in Elias's voice, a sign that, for the first time in years, he was scared. Not cops, not of failure, of the idea that someone had anticipated him down to the minute. What the gang didn't know was that Ethan hadn't predicted the exact time. They had accidentally given him one. For 2 days straight, the silver Honda kept passing by the store at the same times, 2:03, 2:06, 2:09, a rehearsal disguised as coincidence. Ethan realized they were timing police patrol gaps, and once he saw the pattern, everything locked into place. He knew the violence he overheard. He recognized the voices. He matched the tattoos from that night to ones he saw in the store. He tracked their movements, and eventually, he realized they weren't just planning to intimidate him. They were planning to remove the only witness they believed could put them away. So Ethan took control of the one thing he could: information. But the moment Elias raised his gun, it became clear that logic wasn't going to stop what was coming. So Ethan triggered the silent alarm with his knee. He tried to keep the men talking, but what happened next was fast, brutal, and chaotic. Jordan grabbed Ethan by the shirt and slammed him into the counter, shouting that he wanted to know who he told. Reggie smashed open the register and cursed when he saw how little cash there was, realizing this wasn't about money at all. Elias paced like a trapped animal, pointing his gun at Ethan's face and demanding, "Who else knows?" Ethan finally whispered the truth. "Everyone will know." And at that moment, flashing blue lights lit up the front windows. Not because the robbery had triggered a rapid response, because Deputy Ward, the same man who'd walked in earlier, had stayed parked in the lot across the street, finishing his paperwork. Something he'd never done before, but did that night because something about Ethan's expression had bothered him. So when the alarm went off, Ward was already steps away. The next 40 seconds were a violent blur. Elias fired toward the door. Ward dove behind a display shelf. Jordan panicked and dragged Ethan toward the back room. Reggie tried to escape, but slipped on spilled soda and dropped his gun. It was chaos, but the kind that reveals truths. Elias was reckless. Jordan wasn't ready for real violence. Reggie wasn't as loyal as he claimed, and Ethan stayed impossibly calm, almost detached, filing away every detail as if he were watching it from outside his own body. Ward entered, shouting commands. Elias refused. Shots rang out. One bullet hit a refrigerator door, one hit the floor inches from Ethan's leg, and one hit Elias, dropping him instantly. Reggie surrendered. Jordan froze and let go of Ethan. The entire attempted robbery collapsed in less than a minute. But the real twist came after. When detectives reviewed the footage and interviewed Ethan, they asked the most obvious question: how did you know their names? Ethan explained his observations: voices, tattoos, patterns. But detectives felt he was holding something back, something deeper. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't supernatural. It was just unsettling. And they were right, because as police led Jordan and Reggie away in cuffs, Ward placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder and quietly asked, "Be honest. Were you expecting them tonight?" And Ethan said, "I wasn't expecting them. I was expecting someone." That answer triggered an internal investigation, which revealed something surprising. Ethan had been keeping notebooks for years, tracking hundreds of customers, suspicious ones, strange ones, drunk ones, dangerous ones, writing down behaviors, patterns, faces, not for blackmail, not for revenge, for protection. Because when Ethan was 14, his father, also a convenience store clerk, had been killed during a robbery. The killer was never identified. Ethan believed if someone had just paid attention, if someone had written something down, his father might still be alive. So Ethan swore he'd never be caught unprepared. And for years, his notebooks were harmless, until the night they weren't. In court, the surviving gang members were convicted thanks to Ethan's testimony. Justice was served. Ethan was offered a safer job, a new life, even therapy. He accepted the job, but declined the rest. He returned to the night shift within a month, saying, "I just want quiet." But the final twist came from the police evidence room. When detectives logged Ethan's notebook, they noticed the page following the gang members' names, and on that page, written in the same calm, neat handwriting, was another name, written the exact same night, hours before the robbery. A name no one expected, a name Ethan had never mentioned: Deputy Ward, the officer who saved him, the officer who was supposedly just grabbing coffee, the officer who stayed parked outside for reasons he never fully explained. And beneath Ward's name, Ethan had written 4 words that still haunt investigators today: "He'll come eventually, too." If you want more stories with twists like this, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because the next one might just be even darker.